And we're live. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to this Vaccines Revealed webcast. Very excited to be with you. I'm Dr. Patrick GENTEMPO. And we have updates for the audience that's out there, the Vaccines Revealed tribe, which has been growing steadily by thousands and thousands every month. So for the people who are new to the Vaccines Revealed family, welcome. And for you people who have been here from the beginning, we are also very excited to be with you. How can I put it? There's never a dull moment in this movement for people and parents especially to have the right to choose whether or not they want to vaccinate their children, and secondly, to get truth relative to this subject, the unbridled truth, because we know that there's a lot of corporate malfeasance, fraud, and that the government has been hiding information from us. But what we see is that the dam is cracking ever since we launched Vaccines Revealed in early January. There's been a lot of momentum and movement, and in some respects, unprecedented changes that are unprecedented events that have evolved since this movement started. So, the idea of a group of people who want to speak out about vaccines and the moral issues relative to forced vaccination is certainly nothing new. I've been at it for about 30 years. However, there seems to be a new and a heightened awareness around this, a new fervor for the issue. And quite frankly, I think it was predictable, because when kids are being injured every single day based on lies, in some cases losing their life, destroying families, etc., it's only a matter of time before there's a big enough population of people affected before the groundswell emerges and suddenly people start to take action. Now, one of the things that's unprecedented is the fact that now twice, and if you've been watching, if you're not, if you haven't liked our Vaccines Revealed Facebook page, please go like that. Make sure you're following it, because we're posting things constantly there when there's news. One piece of news that was very exciting, and it's happened twice now, is that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is one of the stars of the Vaccines Revealed docuseries, has twice now been on Fox News on the Tucker Carlson show, which I believe is the most watched show on that network. And it's fascinating, and I'll never forget, I was startled the first time he was on, because I'm expecting what I've experienced and others have experienced when we've been speaking to the media, that they're going to attack us, they're going to say we're crazy, they're going to say we're conspiracy theorists, they're going to say that we're anti-science, they're going to say all those horrible things. I've been called a baby killer. I mean, all kinds of horrible things. And Tucker Carlson sat down, sitting across from him is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and Tucker Carlson says, I reviewed the material I was sent, and I just have to tell you, even though I might not fully agree with you, I don't think you're crazy. And that was a startling event in that moment, where I literally caught my breath as I was watching it. And then he proceeded to allow RFK Jr. to speak and lay it out, not interrupt him, not try to challenge him, not try to show him why he's wrong, but let him just lay out the case and the logic for what's going on, relative to these vaccines. And this is especially poignant because RFK Jr. and I had breakfast at CalJam, which is an event that happens out in California every year, and he was speaking there, I was speaking there. And at that breakfast, he was sharing with his story about his frustration that the mass media is not covering this. And the reason, he said, is that he spoke to literally somebody he knew very well, who was the president of a major news network, and said, I sympathize with what you're saying relative to this whole vaccine issue. However, the day that I allow this to get on my airwaves and we start losing sponsors, the majority of which are pharmaceutical companies, I will be fired. So we cannot touch this. So not only was Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on the Tucker Carlson show on Fox News, he had him on a second time about a week ago. And it was even more dynamic and phenomenal. And Tucker Carlson at the end, said, you are welcome on this show anytime you want to come to talk about this. Robert F. Kennedy said, well, I'm thrilled to hear you say this. I'm paraphrasing, of course, because most of the news networks are afraid to touch this issue because of retribution from their advertisers. And Tucker Carlson said, you know, that can't be my concern. That's not why. That's not the purpose of my show. Is not to protect my advertisers. Again, not his words, but basically the sentiments. So I don't know if you all can relate like I do, and I can see literally there's thousands of you out there right now, so welcome everybody. And I'll give Krista an opportunity to shout out to some people in a moment, and we'll get Dr. Bo involved in this conversation. That this is no small thing. When you're getting an audience of millions through the mass media with somebody who's got a reputation for being a very intellectually challenging interviewer who scrutinizes on a very deep level and literally is looking at the case about vaccines in the way that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was laying it out, and not really battling against him, not pushing back, not trying to criticize it, but basically sitting there virtually nodding his head saying, wow, this is startling, because it is. So Vaccines Reveal was created because we couldn't get into the mass media. There was a blackout on this, and to the furthest extent there still is. However, it's starting to creep in there, and I think now that Fox had the courage to let the light of truth shine on this subject, I am hoping that other networks will follow. But I will tell you that I think all of you had something to do with this. I think every single one of you, for caring about this issue, for being vocal about the issue, for getting involved on social media and spreading the word about this issue, for sharing, the Vaccines Revealed mission out there in the world, that you've had everything to do with the changes that are happening right now, and it's going to come home to roost. I mean, yes, there's a lot of noise and craziness going on in the media right now, but this issue is going to come home to roost. And there's going to have to be a day of reckoning, because the lives of these children and the lives of these families and the assault on the rights of human beings in the United States and in other countries relative to the forced injection of these poisons based on lies about what they do and about the safety and efficacy of these things, it cannot be sustained. The only way it could be sustained is if you don't speak up. If people don't have the courage to speak out about it. And it can never be sustained if we keep speaking the truth and keep recruiting more people into this cause, into this vision, into this purpose, so that we can make a change and protect the generations that are coming behind us now from the assault of these chemicals that in some instances are deadly at the worst, and cause all kinds of health problems at the least. So we have some new updates, especially relative to getting medical exemptions. So Dr. Bo and I were talking the other day, and he started explaining to me something that just happened for him, and I said, wow, this is absolutely radical, and I want to share it with everybody. So we are going to have the opportunity for you to listen to some breakthroughs in California, nonetheless. That's probably the toughest state, or one of the toughest states there is out there. I'm sorry, I'm just adjusting my screen here. Relative to the vaccine exemption process, and in California, you remember that was one of the things that spurned Vaccines Revealed, the SB 277, and then the proposal of SB 218, where they really were taking a fascist stance toward getting kids vaccinated. And Dr. Bo happens to reside in California, and he's got a couple of young kids who is absolutely committed to not vaccinating them. Started to take charge, and I wanted to share what he learned. Plus, we have, and I believe it's on the page, a vaccine exemption. I'm looking over here, a vaccine exemption resource document. It's free. Just register for it. Give us your name and email, and we'll send you a link so you can download it. And it's some of the good work that Dr. Bo has done on this particular issue that we want to share with the Vaccines Revealed audience. So before we get the conversation started with Dr. Bo, let's start with Krista. And Krista, I imagine there's some people to shout out to out there, probably more than we can possibly cover in our short time here. But go ahead and bring us in.
we can barely scratch the surface on the number of people that are checking in right now. That is absolutely for certain. But to get started, I'll welcome Dr. Serena Senegar joining us. Out of Alabama, we have Dr. Debbie Sanen. I hope I said that correctly. Out of Minnesota, we have Dr. Gina out of Bastrop, Texas. We also have Lorraine White Coughlin out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have Sandy Ruffabon out of, looks like Ball State. We have Lois Kohler out of Michigan. We have Judy Schultz out of Australia. We have Elizabeth Jackson. We have Tori Oswan out of Alberta, Canada. Elena out of California. We also have, just scrolling up here, we have Masail out of California and Marv Sanis out of Salem, Oregon. So a lot of people. It seems like, you guys are just pouring in the comments. We appreciate that. We look forward to more. Continue to do so. Any questions you have, that's what we're here for. So please post those as well.
Welcome everybody again. And I know that, again, literally I can see my counter, thousands of you are out there. So just so great to be with you. And you should be telling friends about this. This is being recorded. So on the page for a little while, at least afterwards, people can come watch the replay of this. But just wonderful to be with you. Now, Dr. Bo Pierce, co-founder of Vaccines Revealed. You need to tell your story about how you used Vaccines Revealed to prevail upon your pediatrician the need for a medical exemption. So why don't you just take us through, through the whole scenario, Bo, so people can learn from what you did.
Sure. So I first off want to welcome to our family here, and I really do consider the people that are aligned with us with Vaccines Revealed to be family. I can't tell you how many times we have received messages or emails from you guys, and literally we get on our partner calls like this with Jeff Hayes and our mouths hit the floor saying, oh my gosh, what an amazing group of people. I mean, I've seen people literally bend over backwards, everything from letting people, cooking meals for people, finding out that there's a small meetup and they're showing Vaccines Revealed in offices, they're sharing links with their friends, they're answering and asking questions. And this topic, as far as medical exemptions, especially in my state of California, and as we are nearing school starting here in a couple of weeks, people are sending their kids in for their kinder checks before they're sending off to preschool or kindergarten or 6th grade. And the comments and questions have been pouring in. How do I get a medical exemption? What do I need to have written down? What should I be saying to my doctor? What would you want to hear as a medical doctor to be able to write a medical exemption? What are the guidelines, so to speak? So before I get kind of down into the nitty gritty, the dirt, so to speak, I just kind of want to tell you a little bit about kind of how it went down for me and my family. First off, you should know this, that I'm a practicing chiropractor in California. So I treat a wide variety of people in my practice. Family practice, we do a lot of sports, I have a ton of kiddos in my practice, super blessed. But I'm also very privy to adjust a lot of medical-minded practitioners. I think there's a lot of times where people think that there's a deep divide between the more holistic or alternative health-minded doctors and the medical doctors. But to be honest with you, it doesn't appear so in a lot of ways. It seems like it's, people are able to communicate back and forth really easily, and they are able to get on the same path. It looks like, sorry guys, if I'm having issues with my mic, are you hearing me loud and clear out there?
You're crystal clear, uninterrupted, so your mic is fine.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. So to make a very long story short, I'm very blessed to be able to take care of a lot of medical doctors in my community. And one of the doctors, I simply said, hey, I know that you see a lot of kids. Would you mind watching Vaccines Revealed? I don't know what your stance is, if you're pro or anti or somewhere in the middle, that's great. Take this home, just give it a watch, see what you think about it. And the next time we meet up, let's have a conversation and let's just kind of talk openly as two adults, as two healthcare practitioners. Well, lo and behold, my wife takes my kids in for their kinder checkups. And my wife says, I'm here to obtain a medical exemption as well as do my kindergarten physical. And the pediatrician said, hey, I watched what was in that. It was absolutely awe-striking to me. What basis do you feel like you have to have a medical exemption? So my wife went through a few of the key points of the history, some of the autoimmune issues that are in my family. And the doctor simply said, okay, I'll have it done for you next time you come in a couple of weeks. And that was it. It literally was as simple as that.
So that is, I think, a powerful move. And what is the move? The move is saying, can I get you to look at some information? With Vaccines Revealed, there's a lot of information there. But I think, if you're to raise concerns about the issue and ask if you'd be willing to take a look at some information, it's not like just walking in saying, and this is why I liked it was kind of phased, rather than walking in saying, hey, I want a medical exemption for vaccines for my kids, just kind of out of the blue, which incidentally could make them scrutinized. But if you can basically say, hey, I've got concerns about this, I've found some pretty riveting information relative to the subject, and if you see kids, you should know about it. Would you watch it if I gave you the DVDs or what have you? And if the answer is yes, then great. And then give some time and then see, okay, what'd you think? Would you be comfortable giving me an exemption? So Bo, speak to how you would recommend the exemption process. Speak to the document you created, the vaccine exemption resource document, and explain if they download that, what they're going to get in that. And again, there's nothing to buy there, folks. It's free, but I just want you to know what you're getting. Bo, you're muted. No, it's you're not muted from the Hangout. You're muted probably through your mic somehow. Is there a mute setting on your mic? Everybody stand by for a moment while we wait with bated breath. Okay, it looks like he's going behind the computer now. Change settings for your mic. Yep, still not hearing you. Keep working at it, Bo. Just chime in as soon as your mute is on, your mute's off. But I'll just keep listening for you. As you know, every state is a little bit different, and you've got, depending on the state, and of course, even in different countries, it's different. Australia versus Canada versus Europe, etc. So there's different rules of logic and process that will apply to try to get to that goal of a vaccine exemption required medically. Of course, there's in many areas, there's much easier ways to go about this, where you can sign a document of either a philosophical or religious exemption, saying that it violates my religious beliefs or I'm philosophically opposed. Many states still have those, but there's a growing trend, which was initiated in California, where they started to look to take away those particular exemptions because they felt like, they didn't feel like, statistically they were observing that that it was growing as far as the amount of people who are entering those ranks. And why? Because more and more people were hearing about other kids that have been injured. There's more and more data that is out there. The whole thing that you saw in Vaccines Revealed about Brian Hooker and the whistleblower William Thompson at the CDC, and what came out in our program was startling, and of course it got some media play. So there's this growing trend. So think about this. We're seeing more and more people trying to exempt out of the system from getting vaccinated, and if you've got a government agenda and a big pharma agenda to increase the amount of vaccines, you can see why the laws are starting to change. So what's the pushback, or what's the fight? The pushback and the fight is that who's going to win this race? Are they going to win it because we're quiet and we're not shouting from the rooftops and getting more and more people on board with this mission? And incidentally, we are not trying to prevent people from getting vaccines who want them, even though I think they're a really, really bad idea. We're not trying to prevent people who want them from getting them, but we have the right to not get them should we not want them, and the right not for our children not to get them. We are going to be doing some additional production in Vaccines Revealed. We already started lining it up. We've got new stories, new data, new research that's coming out. But one of the people that I'm looking to interview for the new episodes that we'll create around Vaccines Revealed is a mother who's in Houston, Texas, who didn't vaccinate her child, who I believe at this point was about 2 years old. The mother and the father split up. The father decides that he's going to try to throw the mother under the bus, saying she's not a good parent, she won't vaccinate the kid, I want my kid vaccinated. Get the courts involved. The courts forcibly take this kid away from her mother. First time they've been separated like this. Take the kid away from the mother. Look to get her caught up on her vaccines, meaning even more than the usual schedule. And the kid is now brain damaged. She's vaccine damaged as a result. So we start looking at the liability and look at how these actions are destroying lives. And this is not enough. I mean, I've got that one story. I got dozens more that are similar, that are horrifying, that require us to take action. So to me, it's a race, and the race is between our voices prevailing, and especially convincing legislators that they need to back off on the issue of forcing vaccines, or there's going to be complete oppression, laws that are passed that are going to be very difficult to change, that's going to cause some, literally it's going to withdraw every right that we have to try to get exempt. So again, I'm highly recommending that you sign up for to get the vaccine exemption resource document and start to read through that. And you might say, well, I don't, I'm fine. I'm safe at this point as far as, I don't have kids or my kids are grown or what have you. I get that, but maybe there's other people you need to share it with. I'm glad, I could have taken that position. My kids who are unvaccinated, 3 of them, all of them are now past the age of, me having to worry about getting school exemptions for them or being in that schedule. And I'm also in a state where it's a simple form to sign to be able to get them out of that. But it's everybody else's children I'm worried about right now, and it's the general moral circumstance that I'm outraged about relative to this issue. So so that's why we continue to do it. So if you've got a passion or an interest in this subject, and you're somebody who wants to participate in helping to be as part of the solution, it's just a matter of sharing, the values and sharing this resource called Vaccines Revealed. And like I said, get the document, share the document. It's free. Get it out there to as many people as possible. See if hopefully it can be helpful to them. So I want to see if Bo, do we have sound with for you yet or not yet?
Hey, can you guys hear me now? Are we back in action?
We got you. Okay. So
yeah.
So now, on that, go ahead, Bo, pick up from there.
Yeah, I think what's a really important thing a talking point to start with is, at what point are vaccine checks happening? Because we're getting questions, people saying, my son or daughter is going into 3rd grade to 5th grade to 8th grade. Where are the checkpoints happening? And it's the transitions, guys. That's when we're seeing the checkpoints. That's when, at least when they're mandated in the state of California. So when your child is entering preschool, when your child is entering kindergarten, 7th grade, high school, and college, those are the checkpoints from which they will mandate that you have to show either your exemption or your card showing that your child is now fully vaccinated. If you're talking about the state of California, that means that your child will have received 74 doses of different vaccines by the time they are 18 and they have graduated from college. They just added 4 more vaccines to the schedule this past year. So it's definitely something to look into and see where your child is on the spectrum and what grade they're about to go into, and to start to sit down and really formulate that. Like we said, I've got two children myself, 1 in kinder and 1 in 2nd grade. So we're staggering when we are doing our medical exemptions with different children, and I would suggest that if you have multiple children that you do the same. As far as qualifying for a medical exemption, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out the process for you guys right now. If you have a piece of paper and pencil, this is the time to take it out. And what I would suggest you do is that you make 3 columns on this piece of paper. Now, mind you, all you have to do is click below and enter your information below, and I'm giving you guys this information so you don't have to write it down word for word. But what I want to do is give you the brief overview of what should be going in each of these 3 columns so you can best prepare for that time when you sit down with your doctor or your pediatrician. The first column I will call preparation. The middle column is performance. And the third column I call permission. So let's walk through briefly what each of those columns are. Dr. GENTEMPO, if you have questions as we go through this, Krista, if you see people commenting, please ask me. I closed all my other windows out because I want to give full attention to here on this subject. So the first thing that you need to know is, what is your state law? Where do you live along the country? Where do you live among, which state do you live in? Because every single state has different laws. Some of them say, hey, look, you can have this type of exemption, but you can't have that type of exemption. There's 3 basic types of exemption. The first one is what we're talking about, which is a medical exemption. The second is a religious exemption, meaning if the religion that you practice does not believe in allowing vaccinations, in some states you can opt out on a religious behalf. And the third one is a philosophical exemption, where you don't believe it's your personal philosophy to be able to inject children with anything. And in some states you can still use that exemption, which is a simple form, to fill out and to turn in to the school to get them passed. Now here's the thing that's somewhat interesting, is that in the state of California, there is no standard medical exemption form. So every single doctor has to, in essence, write their own medical exemption form or medical exemption for your child. So what I've done is I've actually searched the internet, and what I'm coming up with is this piece of paper right here, and you will see this, and it is in the area that's the download. All you just put, like we said, your name and information there, and it goes through there, and you can give this to your doctor and say, hey, you can use this for your medical exemption. So it's not an official form. There's no state official form, but this is what I'm seeing that parents are using, and they're getting passed with no issues on that behalf. So let's talk about preparation. What do I need to do when I go and I sit down with the doctor? The first thing is this. You simply can't walk into the doctor's office and start talking at a doctor, guys. That you have to understand. You have to have communication with the doctor. The person that speaks at the doctor will never get anything accomplished. And I can't say that I'm sure, Dr. GENTEMPO, you can agree with me. There's nothing worse than a patient walking through your door and saying, well, I said it was this, and Google said it was that, and you just kind of laugh, and you're like, oh my gosh, is this really happening? You know? So the first thing I want you to do is just kind of come into the mindset of you need to be prepared, and I'm going to show you the best way to prepare for it. The first thing that I would do, the first thing that we did, is we sat down, myself and my wife, and we looked at our entire family history. So in that column of preparation, we put family history on the top, and we put 2 wings that went out each side. One for my family and one for my wife's family. And what you want to do is you want to go 4 generations deep, and you want to look for any autoimmune disease that has happened inside your family on both sides. Anybody that's blood related within 4 generations deep, you need to write down their names, the conditions that they have, and you need to find documentation on those conditions for those people. And it can even be if they have death certificates. I have seen doctors write exemptions based off of death certificates due to things like rheumatoid arthritis, due to type 1 diabetes, to Graves' disease, Addison's, etc. So the requirements are this. You have to have a minimum of 4 autoimmune cases to qualify for a medical exemption. Now, mind you, this is stuff that I'm telling you, this is what the doctors, the CDC is telling the doctors to obtain to write a medical exemption. This is what you need to have seen by the patient. So you need to have a minimum of 4 autoimmune diseases. Now, people ask, what are the big autoimmune diseases that we see? I'm going to run through them real quick. They're in this guide for you guys. Celiac, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, lupus, scleroderma, Hashimoto's, Graves', vitiligo, psoriasis, multiple sclerosis, Wegener's, type 1 diabetes. Those are the top hitting ones that we have seen people write medical exemptions all about. Now, let's talk what is not a medical exemption. What is not an autoimmune disease, which many people commonly mistake as autoimmune. The first one that comes to mind is fibromyalgia. People think, oh, I've got fibromyalgia, that's an autoimmune. That is not a definitive autoimmune disease. There's many people that think that it is in the alternative world, but as per your medical doctor, that is not a diagnosed autoimmune disease. Chronic fatigue is not one. Lyme disease is not one. Endometriosis is not one. These ones by themselves will not qualify you for a medical exemption. Now, there are some hyperimmune conditions that people are getting medical exemptions written for. Things like asthma, allergies to foods, to bee stings, to certain medicines, to different reactions that they're having to things that are having given medications and vaccinations, guys. If you have anybody in your family that has had a reaction to a vaccination, that is a very, very strong underlying exclamation point that you want to bring up with your medical doctor. You want to bring up different cancers that have been in your family, leukemia, lymphoma, multiple myeloma. I'm throwing a lot of things out there for you guys because I know there's a lot of you are listening to this that are thinking, oh, my aunt had that. Oh, my grandmother died of that. Oh, this person had that. I really encourage you guys to write it all down. Now, people say, well, I've had, a couple of asthma, I've got allergies, eczema. My suggestion is this, is get as many of those on a piece of paper with documentation as you can. A lot of people are walking into their doctors and saying, I have allergies and my cousin has asthma and he has psoriasis. Can I get a medical exemption? And the answer that a lot of these people are telling us is no. You need to have multiple cases, a minimum of 4, but as many as you can get, the better when it comes to having the proper data, the proper information laid out there for you. The second thing, in addition to the autoimmune diseases, has anybody had any sort of bad vaccine reaction? I know I just touched upon this, but that is so critically important right now. We know that they're giving a lot higher amounts of doses. We're seeing kids that are being quote unquote caught up over a 2 to 3 day period where they're receiving 15 plus doses of vaccines. We've heard multiple reports of people whose child has been injected with 4 or 5 different vaccines and in one visit are having breakouts with hives and seizures and all of these things. Anything that does not seem normal to you as a parent, document. And I highly suggest you take your iPhone and document it as well. And I'm talking pictures. I'm talking the spread of this rash that's on their shoulder. We saw that with a local little boy who had an injection in his glute and then had a big rash, and it developed into something that was absolutely heartbreaking when he ended up passing away. And they said, oh, there was no reaction to the vaccine. And the mother turned around and said, what is this then on my phone that we've seen taking place over the past 24 hours? So all of these things, as much documentation as you can get, you need to lay it out in a very succinct, very thoughtful pattern. So when you go and you sit down with your pediatrician, you can say, look, I'm here to obtain a medical exemption, and here is the reason why. So that is the column that I would call preparation. Any other questions, Patrick?
No, I think that covers it pretty well. There's certainly, again, the varied approaches in different states. One of the things I just want to make is a comment on the religious exemption. Well, I think New York might be an exception to this, but for the vast majority of jurisdictions, they are not permitted, meaning the authorities, to question what your religion is. In other words, it's not legal. You have a right to, there's a separation of church and state. You have a right to practice whatever religion you wish. And except with rare exception, the state does not have the right to question the legitimacy of your religious beliefs. There are a couple of places where that's not true, unfortunately, and that's got to become a legal battle that I hope that the states would lose. But so if you're sitting there saying, well, I don't know that my religion really takes a position on vaccines, it doesn't matter what your religion is. It doesn't matter if you don't have a religion. If you just want to say, hey, it's against my religious beliefs, and they might ask you to comment a little bit further on it. When I was in New Jersey and we were doing this, the comment was that we believe that I don't remember the exact language, but that we're endowed by our Creator with the resources we need to express health, and that to inject these foreign chemicals into a body for the purposes of achieving health is against our beliefs, our religious beliefs. Something succinct. I will also say that the less you say, the better. In other words, be succinct in what your write-ups are. And sometimes people are trying to wander too far and explain too much. And it makes me think of the Shakespearean quote, "Methinks thou protest too much." The less you say, the better. So just say the minimum amount you need to get the job done. As we're dealing with this particular issue called getting a waiver or exemptions from vaccines. And even though, and Bo, correct me if I'm wrong here, but even though there's religious and philosophical exemptions have been taken away in many states, I don't think there's not a single state or jurisdiction anywhere in the world that I know of, at least, that does not allow a medical exemption.
Yeah,
they have to have that. Yeah, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. The medical exemption is the gold standard right now. There's a lot of states that they're trying to push really hard to take away the philosophical and religious at this point, but no one is being able to take away at this point what a medical exemption would hold. And for what we're hearing as far as the scuttlebutt at the political level is that they're trying to end and say, well, we're not going to allow anyone else to get a medical exemption. And there's a lot of infighting that we're seeing at this point. So if you're kind of on that bubble, I would highly suggest that you make an appointment with your doc and you sit down and you kind of go through this process with them.
Okay, so the exemption or the form is there for you to download. And again, if you look on the page, if you can't see it, it's above the Facebook thread. Below the viewing box, but above the Facebook thread, you can see a little box there for us to send you the form. Again, there's no cost, and you are invited to share it or send people to this page so that we can send it to them too. More than happy to get this in as many people's hands as possible. Also, we should probably mention we still have inventory left from the Vaccines Revealed program. So if you are interested in owning Vaccines Revealed, there's a couple of options as far as getting online access, shipping you DVDs, various bonuses that are available, etc. If you scroll down all the way to the bottom of the page, you will see what those, what your options are. We still are able, because it's original inventory when we did the big run. So our on the bigger run, the costs go down, so we can pass those savings along to you. So this is based on that inventory, so you still have a 50% discount available. So either for yourself or buy Vaccines Revealed for somebody else that you need to have it. This is life-changing information, and it certainly helps support the cause. So we appreciate when you invest. So that's down there for you. We should probably take some questions with the time we have left. Bo, is there any last things you need to say? Get the form and get to work on it before we get into questions.
I would just, one last little comment that I've had a lot of people ask me or talk to me about is they said, hey, I went and sat down with my doctor and they said no, they wouldn't write me an exemption. And I would simply encourage those people to ask the doctor why. I would say, you know what, just why won't you write me an exemption? And it could be as simple as something where the doctor says, well, I just need to see this, this, and this, where I've seen a lot of parents get really frustrated and they get up and they storm out of the room. I would simply say, stay level-headed about it and ask the doctor why. I know that you have a belief and we have a belief, but we're coming to this in a very objective way. Can you please tell me why? And see what the doctor says. And if you can't meet the requirements, then just simply thank them and go about your business. But I would definitely ask why. So I know that a lot of you guys are here asking questions. Krista's pinging us left and right now, saying, let's answer some questions, guys. So Krista, why don't you take it away and ask us a few, and we'll do our best to answer.
All right, that sounds great. So I'm going to jump to a question that comes from Serena Senegar. She says, how likely is it that I'll be at least able to postpone vaccines until at least 3 years old for a newborn in Alabama?
Well, if they're not going into any kind of preschools or anything like that, I think the answer is yeah, you could really you have no obstacles. The challenge typically becomes when they're trying to get into school, and especially the public school system, and in some states the private school systems also. And incidentally, we have two kids, one in middle school, one in high school. The older one's at college. And none of them have ever had any vaccines. But with the middle school and high school kid, we just decided to homeschool recently. So that's another thing you could do, is pull them out of school and homeschool them. And that's maybe a whole other topic that we'll explore, maybe in Homeschool Revealed or something. But there's a lot to discuss there. But yeah, so as a 3-year-old, or trying to get somebody, a kid not to have vaccines up to 3 years old, at that point, your pediatrician may give you a hard time about it. I look for a holistic one, holistic, is a kind of in quotes, that, will respect your wishes, and be happy to see you, even if you determine that you don't want to vaccinate your child. But I don't think have the, putting them into the school system issue, obviously, until they're of school age. Anything else to add to that, Bo, or is that, pretty much covered?
I think we have to start back with what is the state mandate? Because if I believe right, I believe that you can still obtain a philosophical and religious exemption in the state of Alabama. So if you feel strongly about it, you can go and obtain that exemption. But I agree with you, Patrick. Hey, if you feel uncomfortable about it at this point, don't do anything that you could potentially regret in the future, and get well informed before you make a decision.
Yeah, as the old adage goes, you can't unring the bell. So, you can't unvaccinate the kid. So if you're feeling sort of conflicted, confused, concerned, it's best to do nothing until you come to a conclusion that you feel comfortable with. All right, what else do we have, Kristen?
We have lots of questions, but I'll jump into one that comes from Gina out of Bastrop, Texas. She says, I'm a nurse and I want to get a flu shot exemption for religion, but what do I need to say to make my point?
Okay, I'll speak to it first and chime in, Bo. But obviously, I don't have all 50 states memorized. But if they have a religious exemption in Texas, then just follow the protocol. And you could probably even Google it. But follow the protocol that says that this is against my religious beliefs, and therefore I cannot have a flu shot. And then it becomes a fight. They say, well, it's mandated for your work. I saw actually, and I think this ties into Amy Skew's posted over here. I'm just going to lean back and read it. She said, I work for the largest pharmaceutical company in the world, and they found out I am not vaccinated. They said I have to get vaccinated or I am fired in 30 days. Help. I won't go against my religious belief. What can I do? So what I would do is exactly that. I'd say, in the state in which I live, if it's true, there is a religious exemption from having to be vaccinated. Rights under that exemption, as vaccines are against my religion. And at that point, if they say, well, too bad, and I'm talking to all the people who have a similar thing here, if they say, well, too bad, we're firing you in 30 days, or you're a nurse and you must have the vaccine. And incidentally, the flu vaccine is so ridiculous. And as a little bit of a digression, can I just voice the absurdity that you cannot make the argument on scientific grounds about why you don't want to be vaccinated, but you can do it on religious grounds? In other words, if you want to take a purely rational approach and say, let's look at the flu vaccine, let's look at the risk and benefits, let's look at the history of it, let's look at all the things, let's look at the risk, what would happen if I got the flu versus what happens, the potential risk of the vaccine, and what's the likelihood that this vaccine will help me. You go through Vaccines Revealed, you see all the stuff we have there on the flu vaccine. Of course, on a purely rational basis, you're not allowed to make the argument. You have to go in and say, just based on beliefs, independent of any scientific evidence, I don't want to have a vaccine. It is so absurd, I can't even tell you, but I think you all get it. But I will say this. If I'm in your shoes And now I have, especially the largest pharmaceutical company in the world, great, or you're working for a hospital as a nurse, whatever it might be, the circumstance, and you're protected by a religious exemption or the right to a religious exemption as legislated in your state, and they refuse to accept that exemption. Now they've just violated your rights to practice your religion. And there's freedom of religion in the United States and other countries. And what I would be doing is I'd be shopping for an attorney who is willing to work on contingency, because you might say, well, attorneys are expensive. When you've got hospitals or pharmaceutical industries to sue, they will work on what they refer to as a contingency, meaning they just take a percentage of the settlement from the lawsuit. Now, some attorneys may say, nah, I don't think there's a good likelihood we'll win, but keep looking, they're out there. And you'd say, listen, my religious beliefs are being violated by this pharmaceutical company, and I want to, assert my rights. And if they threaten to fire me, or if they do fire me due to my religious beliefs, I want them to know that I'm going to sue them. Now, it might be a two-stage process where maybe you have to pay the attorney for a couple hours of time to write a letter to the hospital, pharmaceutical company, whoever, where he's going to threaten to sue them if they violate your religious beliefs. Yeah, and then if that doesn't dissuade them from doing so, now the next step is, okay, good. Maybe they're going to make you a multimillionaire because they violated your religious beliefs, or your right to practice your religion and your right to a livelihood. So it's a battle. Many times in life and throughout history, there's battles that are fought for the truth and for what's right, etc. And I have to tell you that, how can I put it? I'm discouraged, or I feel bad for people who just say, I just don't have time for this. I got 3 kids. I got to work. I don't have time for this battle. And they go and they just get the vaccine. They succumb to the circumstance. And I will let you know, ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly what they're counting on. They know that there's only a small minority of people who are those, lack of a better term, those bastards that are out there who are going to fight them tooth and nail, who are going to stand up for their rights. But they know that the majority of people are just going to succumb and say, I don't have the energy, the time, the inclination to fight this, even though I don't like it. They just get boiled into the system. So I'm hoping that we give you the ammunition and the sense of purpose to continue to fight this fight, because I think it's making a difference. So anyway, anything else to add to that, Bo?
I think you did a pretty good job there.
All right, thanks. What else we got, Kristen?
So next up, I have a question. What if you have no way of showing documentation of family history of vaccine reactions or autoimmune disease? What do you do then?
Vaccine reaction or autoimmune. Okay. So I'll take a swing at that. Yeah. So I think that you need to really look deep within your family history. Go down 4 different generations deep and see why people died in your family. I'll be honest with you. When we sat down and did this with my family, I was asking my parents, then I asked my grandparents, and then it kind of fell off. And I started asking my grandparents, hey, why did Aunt Sally pass away? Or, hey, whatever happened to your mom's mom or your mom's dad? And the stories that came back were literally shocking to me. Oh, this person had rheumatoid arthritis or juvenile arthritis and died at 16 years of age. Or, oh, my grandmother had grandmother's sister had a stillborn, or sudden infant death syndrome. And so I really think we think very topically as just far as mother, father, grandmother, but we don't really dive deep. So the first thing I would do is definitely take a very, very deep dive. Almost kind of think about like Ancestry.com, right, with that family tree, and really start kind of laying out that foundation for them. And then I would also start asking those people as well, when you got vaccines, did you get sick? What happened? Because we had the same instance on our side. I asked my wife's mother, hey, have you ever had a vaccine reaction? And she's like, no, I've never had anything. Well, except when I had the flu shot and I really started to get a lot of pressure and pain in my upper left quadrant and my breast. Oh, that could be a vaccine. So you need to note all of these little things that may seem just inconsequential, but you want to start to write them down and see if it makes sense. Patrick, can I add to that?
No, I think that you know, it depends on some of your own scenario relative to if your kids have never been vaccinated before, if they had been vaccinated and they had some reactions. But I think, again, you do a lot of digging. I am not, when I'm under compulsion by the state, I am not opposed to stretching the truth because I'm forced there. I have a gun to my head wanting to force me to do something that's against my conscience, which means that you know, the morality of the situation changes when you're under compulsion, by an oppressive force. So, I think keep digging, and the deeper you dig, the more you can find some elements. And it's finding the right doctor too, because if you have a doctor that just says, "Oh, this is all bullshit, everybody needs to be vaccinated," it's probably, you're going to have a hard time. But if you have a doctor that says, "Hey, just give me something that I can cover myself," so if somebody asks why did I give the exemption, I can document that I had proper foundation for giving you the exemption. So give them something to work with. We probably only have time for a question or two more. Sorry, I know there's so many out there. We'll try to answer as many as we can. Maybe we'll get on there, and especially Dr. Bo is good with this, is go and start just answering on the thread when there's time. But I will just say one more time, please get the vaccine exemption resource document. It's free. You can just put your first name and email. We'll send it to you. Secondly, if you want to get the Vaccines Revealed docu-series, if you haven't been able to purchase it, we still have inventory left at 50% off the regular price. Just scroll down to the bottom of the viewing page. You'll find it there. And we'd love nothing more than to get that information in your hands, because I do believe also when you're running up against some challenges, if you could share the information and just say, hey, just watch episode 3 and look at Bobby Kennedy Jr. or Robert F. Kennedy Jr. lay out the whole scenario here, the whole case about vaccines and why we should be able to say no to getting vaccinated, or any of the other experts that we have. I will say one thing that I think might be helpful to all of you, because I saw some people post, hey, I saw one thing on here, I read briefly, but it was somebody said that he was at I guess at a farmer's market. He had a mug that said, say no to vaccines, and somebody went off on him, like just went off on him, like, you're killing people and you're the cause of a problem and you're going to cause other people that, that shrill, crazy, they get crazy in their eyes, argument where they really don't know anything except they want to scream at you for having an opposing rational position. But one of the things that I have found as a regular circumstance that works very well when you got people coming at you, which I have, and incidentally, with at least 2 or 3 different medical doctors I know when I've been in this conversation, I start with this and it causes them to take a step back and listen, as compared to looking at me like crazy. And the first thing I say is, are you aware that it's now documented that the CDC lied to us about the connection between vaccines and autism? Every single time it stops them dead in their tracks. They're like, what? No, I never heard that. It is documented that the CDC lied and misrepresented the connection between vaccines and autism. There's a whistleblower at the CDC, Dr. William Thompson, who is recorded on a conversation on a phone call with another person, Dr. Brian Hooker, saying that they lied about the data. Now, if that's true, which it is, might you be open to maybe understanding my position a little bit more? I've never had a person say, oh, I don't care that the CDC lied. I don't care if they found a connection between autism and no, I've never heard anybody say that. And most people don't know it, which is the power of Vaccines Revealed. Now, incidentally, on my servers, I have the recordings of those conversations, and I've been given permission to release them, which we will at some point. So you have, yeah, so I want to get into the world, the actual conversations that happened between Brian Hooker and William Thompson, which I believe they were on the, you know, one of the things we screened was Vaxxed, the movie, and elements of that were on Vaxxed, the movie. But I want to, as we're continuing to put out more content for Vaccines Revealed, we're going to get those out there, and I have permission to do that. We just have to edit some personal information out of some of the conversations. So anyway, so that is, to me, when you got somebody who's getting hostile or somebody who thinks you're crazy, the first thing I let them know is it's been now well documented that the government lied to us about the relationship between vaccines and autism. It's documented. They cannot deny it at this point. And if that's the case, then it breaks, you know, this is how lawyers do it. You find one area where there's a complete corruption of credibility, and now that spreads to the whole thing. So, you know, that's, you know, the tactic there. So anyway, you know, as you know, in Vaccines Revealed in our docuseries, we have so much conversation around all of this, but I'm empathizing. I feel you out there, knowing what it's like to take a position and have people, complete strangers, walk up and just attack you because you have a mug that says "Say no to vaccines." I mean, I get it. I think we've all gotten it, and our goal here as a community and as a tribe is to support each other, share our own experiences, and what best practices we have to effectively combat the situation. So we appreciate all of you tuning in for, you know, for those purposes. So maybe a quick one more question.
Yeah, let me do this. Let me just kind of rapid fire a little bit through some of these that I'm seeing on the thread. Hey guys, 4,400 comments. That's incredible. Thank you guys first off for that. Mike Trabeau out in Santa Barbara is asking, is autistic or spectrum children in our family considered an autoimmune disease by the medical community? No, it is not a considered autoimmune disease. Somebody asked, J.S. Crane asked about a blood test for antibodies that's called a titer, and it's an IgG with a small g and a big G blood tests. So you can have that. That's if you have that test and it shows that there's correlation there, that's definitely a reason to have a medical exemption through there. And somebody said, how, Bo, did you document all of the information? Honestly, I just sat down and I wrote it all out, and I put it in like a 3x5 binder in a very precise way, and just really wrote it out with all of the documentation. I photocopied all of the records from the different family members, and then I sat and presented it to the doctor. So, Krista, anything else that you got there for us?
I'm going to just pick up a quick one here. Krista, you're on mute. I think I don't hear you for some reason. But a quick, maybe you came in now. Somebody said, hey, I just got here a little while ago. Is there any way I can get all the information? Yeah, you know, just stay on this page. Right when we're done, there should be a replay that's up. You'll be able to watch right from the beginning. And again, we have a free document for it. That's a vaccine exemption resource. I see KK is talking about New York will not, if you've been denied a medical exemption, they will not be granted a religious exemption. As I cited in what I was saying earlier, New York is sort of an exception here. They will challenge your religious beliefs in New York. If you watched our Vaccines Revealed series, you'll see the lawyers that we interviewed in the case of a little girl in New York State who was injured severely, a severe reaction, I should say, from her initial set of vaccines. And the state still wanted to force her to get additional vaccines, even when they could show demonstrably that the initial vaccine, was causing a significant reaction. And further, her doctor was willing to give her a medical exemption because of the reaction, and they said no to the doctor. They said, no, we're not going to let this girl have a medical exemption, even though she shows that she's intolerant to vaccines. So New York is the crazy place. It's definitely why, New York, California, the two craziest places for vaccines that exist on the planet right now on the two coasts. So it's, so I hear you, KK, and it's a bitter fight there. And we got to get, no pun intended, but there's got to get some rationality injected into that system. And that kind of stuff would cause me to leave the state. I mean, it's just, how could I live under those circumstances? So anyway, folks, I think we got a call at this point. Dr. Bo, I'd like us all to appreciate Dr. Bo. He put a lot of time into organizing that document and doing the research and finding ways to help you, get a medical exemption should you need it, especially like in the state of California. And then secondly, Krista, thanks so much for, with thousands of people coming in and posting and doing all the things that they're doing. Thanks so much for all your efforts in helping to organize this and keep this all on the tracks. And for all of you who are out there, we really do care. Our passion in this project and what we want to see happen in the world relative to it is real. It is unbridled. I can tell you that our energy levels to get this work done are, for lack of a better term, spectacular. We could be dead tired, but issues can come up around vaccines and vaccines revealed, and suddenly we find energy and power that we didn't know we had. But what's the reason? The reason is because you're out there, because you care, because we get the comments saying, thank you, keep up the work. My kid has been injured and we can't let this happen to other kids. The comments that we get from you and the support that we've been getting from you, and for all the people who actually purchased Vaccines Revealed, thank you very much for that, because that also gives us the resources to keep expanding this mission. And I could tell you that we are never backing down. With all the threats, with our servers attack, all the stuff that's gone on, which is almost like some kind of a fictional movie. Sometimes I feel like we entered a twilight zone. The reality is nothing is more sacrosanct than what you put into your body. No government should tell you what you put into your body or your kid's body, especially if it's demonstrable that these substances cause harm. And to try to force that on you is just the worst type of tyranny that I could possibly imagine, and it's something that none of us at Vaccines Revealed can sit still for. So just know that that we're in this fight and we're in it to win it. So thank you very much again, Bo, Krista. Thank you very much. Great being with you all. Let's stay connected, and every month at least we're gonna be having these webcasts. So please come back and join us again. Take care, everybody.